The more I learn about space, the more confused I become. It's not the unknown that scares me about it anymore, it's the sounds. Today we're counting down the top 10 terrifying signals from space you weren't supposed to listen to. Make sure you let me know which sound spooked you the most, and let me know all of your thoughts on aliens in the comments below. At number 10, Marsquake. On May 5th, 2018, NASA launched the InSight Mars lander, and it was designed to give the planet its first thorough checkup since being formed. This technology allows us to collect lots of data, like hearing what's going on inside of the planet. Compared to Earth, the interior of Mars is fairly quiet, but it still experiences quakes underneath the surface. The InSight lander is equipped with a seismometer called Seismic Experiment for Interior Structure, or they just call it SEIS, which picks up on the different vibrations of the planet and allows scientists to hear what the heck is going on inside. In April 2019, the SEIS got its first hit, which turned out to be, for the first time ever, a Marsquake. This is the first recorded trembling that appears to have come from inside the planet as opposed to being caused by forces above the surface like wind. Most people are familiar with quakes on Earth, which are caused by the moving of tectonic plates. Mars does not have tectonic plates like the moon, but they both still experience quakes. In this case, they're caused by a continual process of cooling and contraction that creates stress. The stress then builds over time until strong enough to break the crust. The audio of the quake is very ominous sounding, almost like a really strong wind, but since space is so silent, it makes things super ominous. It's not so terrifying until you remember it's coming from inside of the planet. Number 9. The Sun. Considering space is such a quiet place, it really seems like everything in it makes a lot of noise. The Sun is no exception. I was totally happy before this video not thinking about the Sun making noise, but now I'm afraid it's all I will be able to think of. The Sun has so much energy coming out of it that it vibrates on multiple frequencies at once, which then cause a humming sound. To me, the Sun sounds like one of those singing bowls used in meditation. It's almost soothing until you remember that you're listening to the Sun vibrate. NASA explained how we're able to hear the Sun, and basically when anything material moves, waves travel through it, and the same thing happens inside the Sun. Those waves are bouncing around the Sun, and if our eyes were sensitive enough, we could actually see this jiggle. Since our human eyes are so useless and weak, scientists turned that jiggle into a sound. Like Mars, we want to know what's going on inside, and thanks to the Sun vibrating at many different frequencies, we can use those vibrations to look inside. Now scientists can see huge rivers of solar material flowing around and are starting to finally understand the layers of the Sun. Number 8. Crossing Saturn's rings. October 15th, 1997 marks the day that the Cassini-Huygens was launched. Commonly just called Cassini, was a space research mission by NASA, the European Space Agency, and the Italian Space Agency to send a space probe to study the planet Saturn and its systems, including its rings and natural satellites. Cassini was the fourth space probe to visit Saturn and the first to enter its orbit, where it stayed from 2004 to 2007. During this mission, one of the things they discovered, unfortunately, was what it sounds like to cross the planet's rings. Saturn's rings are made up of billions of small chunks of ice and rock coated with other materials such as dust. The audio clip sounds mainly like static, but as it goes, you can hear more action and the sound becomes more intense. It's almost like the sound of a really heavy rain. Cassini's initial dive into the void of Saturn's rings was on April 26, 2017, when the sounds were recorded. Not only was this our first time hearing what this section of space sounds like, it's the first time a spacecraft has ever ventured into the gap between the planet and its rings. The sound is so loud it's hard to believe that scientists were surprised to see just how empty it was. At number 7, Earth Whistle. This sound is terrifying because it sounds like something straight out of a video game. Space is far from empty, and as we are learning today, it's not very quiet either. Space contains energetic charged particles governed by magnetic and electric fields, and it behaves like nothing we've ever experienced on Earth before. Particles are continually tossed to and fro by the motion of various electromagnetic waves known as plasma waves. The plasma waves create a rhythmic noise that, with the right tools, we can hear across space. Basically, the waves create distinct sounds depending on the plasma they travel through. For example, the region tight around the Earth called the plasmasphere is pretty dense with cold plasma. Waves traveling inside the region might sound much different to those outside of it. Beyond the plasmasphere, where it's warmer, waves can create a high-pitched chirping sound like a flock of noisy birds. If you look up Earth Whistle, it sounds like the classic laser gun sound effect or like crickets and frogs at night. Either way, it sounds fake, and it's hard to believe it was recorded right by Earth in space. Number 6. Jupiter. Everyone thinks aliens live on Mars. Due to its similarities to Earth, maybe it is the one housing another life form. I would agree it makes a lot of sense that aliens are hanging out on Mars. That was until I heard what it sounds like on Jupiter. I mentioned earlier Cassini, the spacecraft that was sent on a mission to check out Saturn. Well, Cassini had a historic 20-year mission to Saturn, and while in space it stopped by Jupiter to receive a gravitational boost en route to its final destination. Cassini flew by Jupiter in January 2001. While it was flying by, it captured some spooky alien-like radio signals. Of all the sounds on this list, the ones on Jupiter sound the most like aliens. The other sounds were spooky, but this one sounds almost animated, perhaps like a conversation even. Apparently the sound comes from waves that were derived from an interaction of the magnetic field that surrounds Jupiter and the solar wind of particles speeding away from the sun. At number 5. Unusually close signals. There are bright, fleeting blasts of radio waves coming from the vicinity of a nearby galaxy, and they are only pushing one of astronomy's biggest mysteries even further from an answer. The repeating bursts of energy seem to be coming from an ancient group of stars called a globular cluster. What's so special about that? Well, it's one of the last places astronomers expected to find them. These extremely bright and extremely brief bursts of radio waves are known as fast radio bursts, or FRBs. Originating billions of light years away, the FRBs have defied explanation since they were first spotted in 2007. Based on observations, scientists infer that the bursts are powered by young, short-lived cosmic objects called magnetars. That was until a couple of years ago when a fast radio burst was discovered and traced to a globular cluster about 11.7 million light years away near the neighboring spiral galaxy M81. At number 4. Space roar. In space, nobody can hear you scream, but scientists did pick up on what they described as a roar. I don't know if you could find a scarier sound coming from space. Back in 2006, scientists began looking for distant signals in the universe using a complex instrument attached to a huge balloon that was sent to space. The instrument is called the Absolute Radiometer for Cosmology, Astrophysics, and Diffuse Emissions, or just ARCADE. The ARCADE was able to pick up radio waves from the heat of distant stars, but none of them were expecting what they heard next. The instrument listened from a height of about 23 miles, and it picked up a signal that was 6 times louder than what had originally been expected. They tried to source the loud sound, but soon discovered it was too loud to be early stars and far louder than the predicted combined radio emission from distant galaxies, so basically scientists were stumped. Even today, we still have no idea what the source of the roar was. Apparently, on top of not knowing the source, the mysterious sound is so loud that it's making the efforts to search for signals from the first stars formed after the Big Bang quite difficult. It's just out there, covering up our view of early stars and being emitted by something we can't yet imagine. Number 3. Space heartbeat mystery. Mysterious radio signals from space have been known to repeat, but a few years back, for the first time, researchers noticed a pattern in a series of bursts coming from a single source 500 million light years away from Earth. Fast radio bursts, or FBRs, which I mentioned before, are millisecond-long bursts of radio waves in space. Individual radio bursts emit once and don't repeat, but repeating FRBs are known to send out the waves multiple times. Usually when they repeat, it's sporadic or in a cluster, according to previous observations. Between September 16, 2018 and October 30, 2019, researchers with the Canadian Hydrogen Intensity Mapping Experiment, or CHIME, detected a pattern in bursts occurring every 16.35 days. Over the course of 4 days, the signal would release a burst or two each hour, then it would go silent for another 12 days. In 2019, CHIME detected the sources of 8 new repeating fast radio bursts, including this signal. The repeating signal was traced to a massive spiral galaxy around 500 million light years away. Researchers hope that by tracing the origin of these mysterious bursts, they would be able to determine what caused them, but to this day, scientists still have no idea. I know I mentioned aliens a lot, but come on. If anything is another life form trying to get in communication with us, it has to be this. What else would be able to stay so consistent in space? Number 2. Jupiter's bow shock. Well, we all know now that I think Jupiter is home to aliens already, but after hearing Jupiter's bow shock, I don't know if I'm more or less convinced. The sun emits a steady stream of charged solar wind, which can be repelled by a very strong magnetic force, like that of the magnetic field of a larger planet. When the solar wind meets a strong magnetic force surrounding a planet, it's deflected, and all its energy of motion is converted to thermal energy. This energized region is known as a bow shock. The name is borrowed from a similar phenomenon in aerodynamics. mimics. The sound of passing through this region was recorded by the Voyager spacecraft. Voyager 1 and 2 were both launched into space in 1977 to take advantage of a favorable alignment of Jupiter and Saturn. When the spacecraft encountered the bow shock, there was a very sudden burst of intense low-frequency emissions extending over a wide range of frequencies. To me, the bow shock on Jupiter sounds like the little aliens are just chilling, chattering away, and then explosion. It sounds like something big blows up, and the tone of it is much deeper than the high pitch of Jupiter itself. Once again, remembering that the sound was recorded in space makes it even crazier. And at number 1, black hole. Okay, of all the sounds you can hear from space, a black hole is the scariest. I think also just in general, black holes are one of the scariest things that exist. First of all, what the heck is a black hole? Well, according to NASA, a black hole is a place in space where gravity pulls so much that even light cannot get out. Horrifying. The gravity is so strong because the matter has been squeezed into a tiny space. This can happen when a star is dying. Because no light can get out, people can't see black holes. They are invisible. Space telescopes with special tools can help find black holes. The special tools can see how stars that are very close to black holes act differently than other stars. The sound that a black hole makes is even more haunting. I've never heard a more fitting sound effect for a spine-chilling scene in a horror movie. It sounds like what I think hundreds of ghosts and spirits would sound like if they were to circle around a spooky dungeon. Maybe it's just me, but I seriously think it's a sound they used in Harry Potter when they were at Azkaban. That was the top 10 terrifying signals from space you weren't supposed to listen to. I've been your host, Maddie, and I will catch you later.